Hello, everyone. My name is John Miller. I'm the director of the NeoLife Scientific Advisory Board, and I'm here today to share with you some very important information about balancing your blood glucose levels. It's been a long time since I've had the opportunity to be in the Philippines, so to those of you who know me, it's great to see you, or it's great to be seen by you again. For those that don't know me, like I said, my name is John Miller. I'm the director of the NeoLife Scientific Advisory Board. I have been with the company for a long time. This is my 53rd year since I came to work with the group. So you might say I've been around since start. But it's my pleasure today to share with you some of the things we do at the Scientific Advisory Board and some of the evidence behind the products that we bring to you and the important information for you to use as tools to maximize your health and well-being and to help others maximize their health and well-being as well. At NeoLife and the Scientific Advisory Board, we believe that empowering people with knowledge and tools is the best way to help them achieve optimal health and vitality throughout their lives. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take you through this very important subject of maintaining good glucose balance. Probably most of you know what glucose is, but you know, it's always good to review. So if I go over things that you already know, forgive me, but hopefully you'll come away from this with some insights and some ideas on how to use things that are at your disposal to maximize your probability of health and longevity. So let's start with glucose balance, okay? So what is glucose balance exactly? Well, glucose balance is really a range between two poles, right? Two opposite ends. One end of glucose balance is called hypoglycemia, where you just have too little blood glucose, which can become a problem unto itself. And the other end is hyperglycemia, where you have too much blood glucose, and that is a real big problem and what I want to focus on today. And in the middle, we have this balance, this range, and as you can see on the slide here, the range is measured in milligrams per deciliter, or if you happen to have a European approach, the micromoles per liter. Tough forms of measure, but they're essentially the same number. And what this means is that we know from lots and lots of research that's gone on for decades and decades that keeping blood glucose levels in these ranges maximizes the probability of health and minimizes the probability of disease. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that idea. There are tremendous health impacts from having too much glucose, hyperglycemia, right, or too much glucose. Certainly the number one health impact is diabetes, and you guys are probably aware of that already. But perhaps what you're not aware of is that there are a lot of other health implications from too much blood glucose, the things that you see here: heart disease, nerve damage and neuropathy, kidney damage, vision loss, liver damage, autoimmune dysfunctions, periodontal disease, pretty obvious, cavities, too much sugar causes cavities, gum disease, lung disease, celiac disease, renal failure, and there's even evidence now that elevated blood glucose levels contribute to colon cancer in men. So there's a lot going on here besides just diabetes, okay? You can see that in this data from the World Health Organization from the Philippines, okay, right there where you are. You can see in the chart here that it says the number of deaths in the Philippines attributed to diabetes, mortality attributed to diabetes. And then to the right in the box I've put there, you can see the number of deaths attributable to high blood glucose. And you can see that those additional deaths are almost as many deaths from high blood glucose separate from diabetes as there are from diabetes itself. So there's a lot of information out there that tells us we need to be concerned about our blood glucose balance, whether we are diabetic or pre-diabetic or concerned about diabetes at all. So what is diabetes? Well, diabetes is a global health crisis. In 2019, it was estimated that 463 million people in the world had that. and more than 90% of that was what we call type 2 diabetes. There was another 374 million expected that had impaired glucose, meaning that they were having glucose intolerance or prediabetes. Then 90% of those don't know it. That's a big number. So 90% of people who are not diagnosed with diabetes but have a pre-diabetic state don't even know that that's the case. The annual healthcare cost to the world, these are very conservative numbers, I believe, is $850 billion. That's a lot of money, even though I said pretty conservative, but nevertheless, it's something that all governments are concerned about, caring for their people. The problem is that we're not doing very well at it with the messaging and the material that's going on right now. Diabetes is rapidly rising all over the world. And as you can see here, it's gone up pretty steady from 2000, when there was 151 million people, to 2019, when there were 463 million people. That's a 300 and some % increase in less than 2 decades. That's a pretty scary thing. But what's worse, if you look to the projections for 2030 at 578 million people and 2045 at 700 million, that the trend line is bad, that this is not something that we are getting a handle on, and it's going to be a problem for a long time to come. We need to take individual action to offset this. Diabetes in the Philippines is, so far the Philippines has got their challenges with diabetes. So about 4 million adults, 20 to 79 in this data from the International Diabetes Foundation. Filipinos have diabetes, according to 2019. It's estimated that that's about 7% of the entire population between the ages of 20 and 79, excuse me. As is the case with the rest of the world, that's expected to go up. The estimates for 66.7% of diabetes cases are diagnosed, and the rate of diabetes is going to rise by 74% by 2045. Now, that's Southeast Asia data, but we found that that data is very indicative and reflective of the Philippines specifically. There are 3 forms of diabetes. I know some people think there are 2. I tend to think there are 3. There's type 1, when the body produces little or no insulin. Insulin is the hormone that's needed to move glucose from the bloodstream into the cells so energy can be produced. We're not really sure what the causes of type 1 diabetes are, possibly an autoimmune disorder, but again, we're not really sure what drives that autoimmune disorder. So it's a little bit of a mystery still. Luckily enough, we do know how to treat it, though, and people with type 1 diabetes can get exogenous or insulin from outside their body to offset the need. Type 2 diabetes, which didn't used to be so common in the world, is now the most common form of diabetes in the world by far, is when blood glucose levels remain high, even though there's enough insulin being produced by the body. It's just not responding to that insulin. That's called insulin resistance. It's when cells stop responding to insulin, stop taking glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cell for production of energy. Thus, the glucose levels build up in the bloodstream and cause all sorts of challenges for us. So we'll talk a little bit more later. And then there's what I call type 3 or prediabetes. That's when your blood glucose levels remain higher than the normal healthy range, but not high enough to be fully diagnosed as diabetes. Yet the challenges and the difficulties that those cause, especially over time, I think deserve attention at being treated as a specific form of diabetes and managed accordingly. The good thing about prediabetes is, for the most part, you can manage it yourself if you take action. If you use knowledge and tools, you can actually turn it around. There are lots of evidence out there where people have got on the pre-diabetes bandwagon, so to speak, and have been able to get off it and return to a full normal health. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. So what are the causes of type 2 and pre-diabetes? Well, there is the primary risk factor. There's a genetic or ethnicity-based thing. There are certain portions of the population that are genetically predisposed to have diabetes be a problem for them. That comes in a couple of different fashions, you know, obesity and things like that are genetic rather, tend to drive those things. Also, poor diet, which is probably the biggest single driver of prediabetes in the world today. And inactivity, which with a poor diet, high sugar content, low energy expenditure, you're going to end up with making a lot of fat. So overweight and obesity become big drivers. Overweight and obesity are almost a symptom, though, of the diabetic diet, the pre-diabetic diet, if you will, the thing that drives it. So, but those are the primary risk factors. The progression of diabetes is well known in the medical community. You know, you can see here in this chart, you move from normal to pre-diabetes, which is also very closely related to metabolic syndrome and to full-on diabetes. And you can see the numbers that they use to determine how much blood glucose is there. Fasting blood glucose. That means when you get up in the morning before you eat anything, you take a blood test and they tell you how much blood sugar is there, how much glucose is there. Normal would be less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. Prediabetes and metabolic syndrome is any time that level of blood glucose remains in the 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter. And then anything above 125 is considered diabetes. That's a pretty strict interpretation, but most of the medical community, including the American Diabetes Association that this comes from, feel that's the case. That's a pre-diabetes, that's a fasting blood glucose test. If you take a oral glucose tolerance test, go to the doctor and they will, in a controlled condition, feed you a known dose of glucose in an oral solution. Then they will look for a response in your bloodstream over time. They'll take a couple of checks, 30 minutes later, 2 hours later, so on. And anything over it should be less than 140. Anything over that suggests that you're pre-diabetic. 140 to say 199 or 200 you would be considered pre-diabetic, and anything over 200 would make you give you a full-on diabetes diagnosis. And then you probably heard of the A1C values. Again, this is a reflection of the blood sugar levels in your diet over time, in your bloodstream over time. And these numbers are, less than 5.7% hemoglobin A1C in your bloodstream, and then 5.7 to 6.4 is prediabetes. Anything above 6.5 is, again, a driver of a full diabetic diagnosis. There are many damaging effects of high glucose. You saw the data that implicated all those other health conditions, in addition to diabetes, that are related to high blood glucose. Primary reason for that is high blood glucose drives both oxidation and inflammation. And we like to tell people that oxidation and inflammation are the evil twins of aging and disease, and that's certainly the case. So when you have elevated blood glucose over time, you tend to enhance the actions of these two evil twins, if you will. So uncontrolled blood glucose, it's reactive. It reacts with tissues throughout your body, proteins and fats, and accelerates oxidation and inflammation events that go on. And those two are drivers of both of disease and aging. So even though you're thinking that you're not aging as fast as you might want to, if you've got elevated blood glucose levels, especially over time, you are definitely aging. And we know that accelerated aging and increased risk of disease go hand in hand with inflammation and oxidation. So the leading risk factors of glucose imbalance, not just diabetes, but glucose imbalance in the broader context, again, is hereditary. There are some people that are predisposed to it. Poor diet, which, I think you all probably know what that is already. And inactivity, and you probably already know what that is. It's eating your cheeseburger and fries while sitting on the couch. Doing that over and over and over is going to result in glucose imbalance. You're going to have way too much blood sugar, in relationship to the amount of energy you're expending. And there's only two choices your body has. It can either burn it as energy or store it as fat. And if you're not getting up and moving, it can't burn it as energy. So it's going to store it in fat, which leads to obesity and overweight, which, again, is a driver of diabetes. So preventing the progression, it becomes pretty obvious then. Get up off the couch and stop eating junk. Okay. Research shows that the risk of developing type 2 diabetes can be reduced by more than half, as much as 58% in these particular studies, by some simple steps. Exercising moderately, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. What is moderate exercise? That's getting up and going for a good walk. I know the you folks in the Philippines like to party, so go dance. Dancing is a good form of exercise. Ride a bike, whatever it might be. Go to the gym if that's your preference, but try to get that done. And you don't need to go to the gym 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. I mean, you can if you want to, but if you don't have to. You can walk one day, dance one day, go to the gym one day, go for a swim one day, whatever it is. But you need to get that done. That and losing about 5 to 7% of your body weight. I think that's always important. All of us tend to carry around a little extra fat, but particularly people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic, there's always a little extra body weight that they can get rid of. And finally, and probably most importantly, is eat healthy. Avoid those processed fat industrial food products. They look like food, but they're actually manufactured food products that contain all of those calories. They taste wonderful and all of that, smell wonderful, all of that, but they contain a load of stuff that is not good for you. And in this particular case, they're big drivers of blood glucose levels. If you eat, say, French fries, your body treats those things as fatty sugar, moves the fat away and converts the carbohydrate from the French fry into glucose very quickly. So you can eat French fries and get a glucose spike in your bloodstream similar to that you'd get from just eating sugar. Might take a few minutes longer, but the end result would be the same. So eat healthy. Blood glucose regulation is something that NeoLife has been working on for years and years. Okay, we at the SAB started doing research on blood glucose regulation probably in the 1980s, when SAB member Dr. Fred Hooper brought this interesting bit of knowledge to it. He said, all of the data suggests that when it's all said and done, it's all going to be about sugar. And his reasoning for that was typically the human body has to work to get sugar out of food. But the way we've done it now with the modernization of the food supply and the industrialization of food, we have made getting sugar out of food too simple. It's in everything. It's hidden in everything. If it's not directly there as sugar, it's a processed carbohydrate that reacts in the body just like sugar. So we knew a long time ago it was going to be a problem. And for years, we worked on how to deal with this. We came up with what we call glycemic response control, which is a mechanism for blood glucose regulation. It's present in our protein products in NeoLife Shake and things like that. It's a technology that allows us to deliver a high density, rich protein meal with a controlled, a smart amount of carbohydrate, if you will, that doesn't cause a glucose spike. That enters the body very slowly and provides energy over a prolonged period of time. That sort of blood glucose regulation is something that we need to have from our food. We need to think about our food in that context. And NeoLife's glycemic response control technology, present in, like I say, NeoLife Shake, was an indicator of that. We actually did that work back in the 1990s and had it published, I think, in the year 2000 in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition, and well before it became the hot topic it is today. So it's because by paying attention to nature and the fundamentals of human nutrition, you come to those sorts of insights. If you're driven by the market, you're more worried about what people like to consume. And when you're driven by science like we are, you're more focused on what people need to consume and what they need to know, the tools and the knowledge to manage these things themselves. Glycemic control is important for more than just diabetes, though. Glucose is the primary energy of brain fuel. And, if you get too much of it, it's not so much a problem, other than it feeds inflammation in the brain, which is a problem. But if you get too little of it, it can be a real problem. But the key is it's the steady supply of glucose. Steady glucose values in your bloodstream are vital to the functioning of your brain and central nervous system. We find that when that happens, there are advantages in memory and other cognitive functions, but when that's not happening, those things are disturbed, that elevated blood glucose becomes a driver, a promoter of the decline of memory and cognitive function. The older you get, the more that becomes a fact. So really important to look at. So this brings me to NeoLife GB. Okay, we've been talking about the importance of diet and so on, diet and exercise, and certainly you can do this with diet and exercise. You can get a long way down the path towards balancing your blood glucose levels. But, you know, our goal is to provide knowledge and tools, and NeoLife GB is a tool to help you with that process. We want you to lose weight, and we want you to control your diet, and we want you to get off that trajectory that has you moving towards prediabetes, or if you're already there, to get back off of that line. And we think that tools can do that. What we do is we spend a lot of time doing research, and that's what's behind NeoLife GB. Lots and lots of research. GB is a whole body glucose management tool. It actually delivers things to your body that your body can use to help manage blood glucose levels in addition to its own capabilities. It's a very powerful product. It's about moving blood glucose, the glucose in your blood, out of your bloodstream and into cells and using that. It'd be good if you got up off the couch and burned some of that off, but nevertheless, it helps with that. When those sorts of things become compromised or challenged, this can be an important tool to help you get back on the right track. It's based on a unique botanical blend. It's natural whole food source botanicals of cinnamon, curcumin, turmeric. These are rich in polyphenols. Nothing here that you probably don't know about. You know, I would imagine that these sorts of things, you've eaten foods that contain these and are familiar with them. So these are all natural components that the human body knows exactly what to do with, as sort of human natural nutrition, if you will. These are rich in polyphenols, and these polyphenols have many, many different benefits. For example, cinnamon. Cinnamon is rich in polyphenols that have been proven to support healthy glucose metabolism and healthy blood glucose levels. Studies show that these polyphenols help lower blood sugars by slowing the stomach emptying. In other words, when you eat something, it slows the rate at which those sugars from those foods enter your bloodstream, which helps maintain that, keep you from having a glucose spike and help maintain that controlled blood glucose level. And slowing the rate of sugar absorption, even when things are digested in your gastrointestinal tract, the rate of sugar entering your bloodstream is slowed down. So this is a very important contributor to that. Another one, turmeric and curcumin. These are traditional spices in Indian cuisine and medicine. That's the Ayurvedic approach to natural medicine. They supply an array of polyphenolic compounds called curcuminoids that help maintain normal blood glucose levels as well. Research suggests that curcumin acts in these ways. It helps maintain blood glucose levels. It favorably influences blood fat levels, meaning that, you know, generally in a bad diet, you're getting a lot of fat along with your sugar, and it helps maintain ratios of that. And it has this anti-inflammatory ability to it. These polyphenols that are there are anti-inflammatory polyphenols. And any of you that have been around NeoLife know about the importance of polyphenols to reducing not only oxidation events in the body, but inflammatory events as well. So it's right along that path. It also contains two very important nutrients. These are biologically bioactive substances that we need to have in our body that are directly involved in the management or utilization of glucose. Chromium, which is an essential trace mineral and a cofactor with insulin in carbohydrate metabolism, how the body uses carbohydrates, and in terms of cellular responsiveness to insulin. If you don't have enough chromium in your diet, that can contribute to what we call insulin resistance, or when cells stop responding to insulin. Alpha lipoic acid It serves as an antioxidant in all of the cells of the body. It's present everywhere in the body, protecting from free radical damage. It supports the cell's ability to utilize insulin. Again, if your body's producing enough insulin, but your cells aren't responding, that is a form of prediabetes. And it helps facilitate normal blood levels. There are other potential benefits associated with these nutrients, these ingredients with GB, and that is effects on glucose and glycosylated hemoglobin. That's the HbA1c. Complicated thing. Most people just call it A1C values, but a really good indicator there. It's a positive effect on blood fats. It's reducing of inflammation. We know that the polyphenols in these things are anti-inflammatory, and they have also been shown to have benefits for mood and cognitive effects. So really important things. These are things we've known at the SAB for quite a while. So they have additional benefits that we've been able to confirm through research. That is cognition, brain function, how clearly you're thinking, and memory and things like that. Mood and hunger. Improved memory, working memory, and mood after long-term curcumin supplementation was shown to be a benefit of taking that particular ingredient. And another one was influence of appetite control, meaning that in addition to helping you slow the uptake of sugars and things like that, and slow the clearance of sugars and sugary foods out of your stomach, it tends to suppress your appetite a little bit. And again, important help, assist, if you will, in coming to grips with your dietary realities. So GB is a whole body glucose management support tool. It is not going to get the job done by itself. I'll be completely honest with you. It is going to require you to be involved. What does that mean? It means you need to make good food choices whenever you can. Doesn't mean you have to abandon everything that you like, but make food choices consciously. Don't just eat for the sake of eating. If you can, think about what's going on. Okay, so you got to do that. You got to participate. And number two, you need to get up and move around. If you're not getting any exercise, if you're not walking and things like that, you need to get that done. And then finally, glucose balance becomes another tool that you can use in the pursuit of your blood glucose management goals. Okay. So, as is the case with NeoLife, we like to do research. Those of you who have been around know for a long time, and I want to tell you about some that we've done on GB. These are results from studies of both young and older adults, and they suggest that GB can help very much in your glucose management challenges. Here's what it is. 2 studies. There was an acute or short-term one-day trial looking at the immediate impact that this would have on people. And then there is a chronic or long-term trial where we worked on a 3-month program. I'll tell you a little bit about both, okay? The short-term study experiment design, it was what we call an acute study. We're doing it in real time right now, proof of concept in young adults. They took 2 tablets twice daily, glucose balance. It was blinded and placebo controlled. They either got the glucose balance or they got the placebo, and they did not know. They didn't know what they were getting, and nor did the researchers know what they were getting. This keeps the data nice and clear when it finishes at the other end. What we found was, even though it was just one day, we found some impact, right? The young adults in the short-term study, we saw a change in the profile of the glucose curve, meaning that even though it was one day, compared to the placebo-controlled group, the ones receiving GB had an improvement in their blood glucose profile, the amount of blood glucose that was in their body. And it reduced hunger. In addition to the analytical data you get from going in the laboratory, we also get feedback from them, and we ask them about things like this. And again, the group that was receiving glucose balance reported significantly fewer feelings of hunger compared to the group that was receiving the placebo. Again, important message, important tool for helping you reach your blood glucose goals. This is a picture of the difference. The difference was pretty significant. If you look at the placebo, the orange line, you can see that blood glucose values were significantly higher, especially in that 30-minute to 90-minute range compared to the placebo. That is a demonstration of the effectiveness of this product and that in contributing that benefit. This information was presented by Dr. Diane Clayton. This is Dr. Clayton here. She's a member of the NeoLife Scientific Advisory Board and directly involved in the research and development of products for us worldwide. She presented this at an obesity research symposium. You can imagine that obesity and diabetes are closely related, so this would be important information. This was in Switzerland in 2019. And it was very well received at that event. The longer term study, this was in the older adults. These are adults age 50 plus. They took 2 tablets daily, 2 by 2, 2 in the morning, 2 at night, with glucose balance for 3 months. This is just the glucose balance alone. We were just looking at how we could impact these people in what we call real time. It's the way the product enters the marketplace as people start taking it. So, and we measured a number of things. We looked at blood glucose, we looked at A1C values, body fat, body weight composition, and cognitive measures. A really broad look at how these things work, but this is what we found. In 3 months, we saw a change in the profile of glucose curve and effect on A1C values. Those were positive effects in the sense that the glucose levels were normalized or reduced, and that was shown to be true at the end in the A1C values. The A1C values generally reflect the status of your blood glucose levels over a previous period of time, say 2 to 3 months. And as you can see, in this study, we showed a benefit in H1C at the end of the 3-month study, which we expected to see, but it was still good. We also saw positive effects on cholesterol and triglycerides. These blood fats are things that we always should be sensitive to. And there were also benefits of cognitive effects, word recall, memory, and focus. These were some of the things that we work with these folks in the background when we're talking, in addition to taking blood samples and things like that. This information was published here recently in Current Developments in Nutrition. You can see the thing down there. This is a supplement that goes out regularly that talks about what the latest research in nutrition is doing, and this certainly met that requirement. Here again, you see the older adults' glucose at 2 months. Again, the placebo in this particular case, compared to the glucose balance, was pretty big difference in the curve, right? Blood glucose levels were good, and you can see the difference in the curve there, time in minutes. So it was definitely provided a benefit. Proven effects. When we go back and we look at what we've seen, again, we have all of these data about the raw materials, and then we go on to put the product together, validate the raw materials, make sure everything's there, and then we'd like to go out and test it in humans. And when we did this, these are the sort of effects that database tells us we can expect. Beneficial effects on blood glucose or A1C values, we actually saw that. Effects on blood fats, yes, we actually saw that. The support for reduction of inflammation, yes. And mood and cognitive effects, yes. These things were reported to us by the people that were involved in the trial. So this is a really broad support for glucose balance regulation. And as I started by saying, balancing your blood glucose is a very important thing. I think we know about it relative to diabetes, but we don't necessarily think about it in the grander context of it has more than just diabetes. Diabetes is by far the most important challenge or the most important negative outcome associated with imbalance or unbalanced blood glucose. But there's a wider range of things that we need to be considered. So finding your balance, getting that under control and finding your balance is an important thing to do. So, I think you want to make it, you want to be aware. I don't know how many people are aware of their blood glucose levels? You know, I am. I have a little device and take my blood glucose levels regularly. I'm happy to say I am less than 100 milligrams per deciliter, according to my, not only to my little machine, but to my doctor when I go for a visit. So it's something we should know about. The more information you have, the better you will be at managing things. You don't know if you've got a problem till you check, and you don't know if you're making progress, should you have a problem, if you don't check as well. So it's good to know these things. And, you know, as I started out saying, giving people, empowering people with knowledge and tools is what NeoLife is all about. And the knowledge that I've shared with you today, I hope will empower you to understand the importance of good glucose balance and the downside of glucose imbalance, not only in the short term, but more specifically in the longer term throughout your life. So it's been my pleasure to share this information with you today, and I look forward to an opportunity to visit the Philippines sometime in the future. But if I don't, figure that we'll be here working on your behalf anyway. Thank you very much.